Hey everybody, I'm Paul Wilke.
And I'm David Oro, and you're listening to The Embargoed, the greatest PR podcast of all time. And we're going to do it when we want, which is usually every other week.
Whether it's tech, business, sports, music, or your mama, we're going to cover it.
All of it comes from the point of view of public relations, reputation, and communications. Today is Thursday, August 18th, 2022. Welcome to The Embargoed. Paul, it's been a while since I saw you.
It's been a while, and I think since we last recorded, you are one of many podcasters in the world that have come down with COVID.
I did get it. It was not awesome. I tell you that. It took me, what happened? It was like mid-July, end of July, and then two of my kids got it. And then so we were a household full of COVID, and I know I have an Airstream. We park it on the side of the house, and I isolated in this Airstream for 3 days, solid. And but it took me about a week and a half to get back. I had brain fog. It got me good. I don't think I was ever in danger of like being hospitalized or anything, but I think my pride hurt me the most. I mean, it was like 2.5 years not getting this thing after it was a pandemic. And so I'm better now. Still weird. I lost my smell. That was really weird. But I guess it was my turn.
I got to ask, how was quarantining in the Airstream? You must have felt like the boy in the plastic bubble or something.
Yeah, it was a little bit like that. I was in there for like 3 days just because I was resting. But we have a TV in there, and I have a little over-the-air antenna, not cable, not streaming, but like the old school antenna. Oh. Yeah, and well, apparently you can get like 65 channels on that thing.
Any of them in yeah. Oh, that's the question.
Most of them are in Vietnamese, but like I did watch too much of Hoarding. The show Hoarding, and that was pretty bad, but it was good. It was a nice way to stay away from the healthy people in the house, so it was all good. I'm glad we're back. So we're back today, and for the first time ever, we actually have a guest between me and you, Paul. So we're going to welcome our guest here. Her name is Michelle Garrett. She is a PR consultant, a freelance content writer, and she does a lot in B2B tech and manufacturing. Welcome to the show, Michelle. How are you?
Michelle.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We wanted to get to this, but we got to introduce what we've been up to and the recovery from COVID. So I'm here.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. Have you gotten that yet, or you've been lucky to stay away from that whole thing?
Not that I know of. I did have a cold that lasted a couple of weeks, like in July, and I'm starting to wonder if that could have been it because my son had a cold and gave it to me, and so it could have been. But I'm all I'm as vaccinated as I possibly can be. So, and I wear a mask inside, and so I'm pretty cautious about it. But.
Well, welcome to the show, and I'm glad you didn't get it. I got it. I survived. I've seen other people survive and stuff like that. So we got you on the show, Michelle, because we've been noticing you on Twitter.
Your Twitter game is on point. One of my colleagues, I send your tweets probably like once or twice a day, and I'm like, she's in my head. You're reading my mind. And I feel bad because you think the same things I do about our industry. It scares me. But
right?
it's amazing. And everyone on this podcast absolutely needs to follow you on social media.
Yeah, and it's on Twitter at PR is us, which is us, right? So.
Yeah, sometimes I wish I had factored my name into that somehow, but a lot of people, love the handle. And so it was like 13 years ago that I picked that handle out when I knew nothing about Twitter and didn't think I was really going to like Twitter. So there you go.
Michelle, tell us about yourself. Who are you? What do you do? Where are you based? All of the good stuff that makes Michelle Garrett and the PR is us Twitter handle shine.
Well, I mean, I've been doing this a long time. I've been in communications for more than 20 years, and that includes, PR, marketing, internal communications, external communications. I've pretty much done it all at this point. I do work primarily with B2B clients, and I do work a lot in manufacturing and industrial sectors now. I used to live in Silicon Valley, and so I worked in tech. And I moved back to Ohio, which is kind of where my family is, where my roots are. And I found that the money for technology startups and companies here was much different. So, but I enjoy working with the manufacturing companies, and I actually work with clients all over. So I'm not going to say that I only work with clients here in Central Ohio, but it's been an interesting road and an interesting mix of clients along the way.
How long were you out here on the West Coast in Silicon Valley?
7 years.
7 years. And
Yep.
you're from Ohio. You came out to California, and then you moved back, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Are you finding geography is less an issue with your clients now?
I think so. I mean, I've always been one to use technology and work across time zones anyway. Even when I was out there, I had clients that were in other countries and it was never an issue. So I just never really saw it as, oh, I live here, so I have to work with clients in my own backyard. But some clients do. I mean, I guess they think if you're close by, that makes a difference, which always is kind of a question mark in my head. Like, we don't really get together in person. Like, I can't remember, to be very honest, the last time I went to a meeting in person. We just don't do that.
I had a client for 2 years and I just met him recently. It was the weirdest thing, to walk up. We met in lunch in San Francisco. First of all, I confirmed they all had legs. I'd never seen their legs before, and they were there. And literally it was a group, and it was a marketing group team that I was working with. I was obviously doing the PR function, and the others marketing, email, web, whatever it is. And we all just sat around and looked at each other. And as we were looking at each other, one of them said, "This is weird, right?" It was actually really weird. We had to get through that a little bit, and then it got a little bit normal. Like, how do you socialize? But yeah, it's not done. Speaking of Central Ohio, it's actually coming that way. Is Intel supposed to be building some big, gigantic plant there soon? That's what I heard through the news,
That's the buzz. That's the big buzz. So we'll see. It's an interesting place to do business these days. So we'll see. I don't know.
In addition to your Twitter handle, PR is Us, I think you have the most genius LinkedIn profile name. And mine is, LinkedIn.com/in/David Oro, because that's me. Mm-hmm. Yours is PR strategist. Do you not like your name, Michelle? Or are you looking for some SEO points here? Or what?
I guess, right? No, it's so funny because my maiden name is Messenger, which is perfect for PR. So many people said to me that you should really be using, that name. And so, but I think I've just kind of leaned into the PR side because for a long time too, I really thought I wanted to write more than work on PR, projects with clients. And now I'm kind of leaning more into the PR because I think that's really where they need the help. The writing comes into play no matter what. But honestly, I don't know if I should say this, it's more fun maybe to work with on the PR projects than it is the writing projects sometimes. I don't know. I feel like there's just more, I don't know. It's a different, part of my brain, I guess, that I'm using, but
it's definitely a wider emotional spectrum. You get the highs and the lows more with the PR than you do the writing.
I feel like for me now, it's just more about choosing the right clients because that's been, I've been on my own a very long time now, and I think the secret for me is understanding what works for me and then looking for those qualities in a client. And sometimes you don't know, even if you have, meetings ahead of time and conversations and you think you're on the same page, as soon as you start working with them, you might find out, yikes, they're not a good collaborator, or they hired me and then they disappeared. That happens so often. I'm like, we have a scope of work here and I want you to, I want to utilize that. I want us to be like, doing a lot of things like that are on this scope of work. And I don't know if they're busy or, I like to have independence and run on my own and have them trust me, but I also need them to show up and collaborate. And, we need to bounce off each other sometimes, so that's been a thing that I've been looking for more is just, not one-off projects, clients that really want to dig in, that no PR isn't an overnight one and done thing. It's an ongoing effort, and it can, yield a lot of benefits, but they have to engage with me to make it work.
Right. What are some red flags for you when you're either taking on a client or talking to a potential client?
Well, anytime they say something like, can you get us links, or can you get us in TechCrunch, or can you get us in the Wall Street Journal, or can you get it, some of those things are just, I think that's the wrong focus, I guess. I mean, to me, it's more about, first of all, we're going to determine like where their audience is spending time, right? And it may not be the Wall Street Journal. I love Rand Fishkin talks about the Wall Street Journal problem because it's really an ego issue for a lot of CEOs. And I think startup founders and things, they think being in TechCrunch, the Wall Street Journal is going to change their whole world like overnight. And it just doesn't work that way. And I think that if they don't understand that, if they're open to learning and listening and working together and being educated about what might work, then that can work. But if they're very dead set on this idea that they know what it takes and this is what it takes, then sometimes I'm suspicious, leery.
That's very fair.
Yeah, I had that recently, and I worked with a client that just wanted to be in TechCrunch. And I'm like, but your audience is elsewhere. They wanted to be in TechCrunch. And I said, all right, we'll do the TechCrunch thing because they had a very limited budget. And they even waited a couple of weeks to be in TechCrunch. It was a funding announcement, obviously. But I'm not sure that's always the best strategy. It's helpful. It's widely read. And people do notice you. I do know that when I get in TechCrunch, people are like, oh, yeah, we saw that in TechCrunch. I've moved away from TechCrunch a little bit. I'm just kind of reading news all over the place. But back in its day, TechCrunch was the place to be. It still is the place to be. I just guess I'm not going there all the time. But finding the right audience for the folks who's there is also important. I mean, wherever the business is.
I think to Michelle's point, when they're swinging for the fences, we want Wall Street Journal, we want New York Times, that's a red flag. And I think one of the, we've had a couple of clients, even lately, where they've turned down media opportunities we've gotten for them because they weren't New York Times, they weren't Wall Street Journal, and you want to just kind of wring their necks, like you got to work, you got to get some singles on the board first. You've got to get, you've got to pay your dues. And
in this day and age, I think you can take all the hits because you can repurpose it in so many ways, right? Like there's
whatever you get,
credibility that you're looking after, and those things pile up over time that really sell your credibility to clients, right? Whether it be Click Z magazine to the WSJ, right? Like you add those things up all the time. You use them on your website, you use them in social media, you use them in mailers, like all of that stuff is what we're producing for you. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think you have to start somewhere because, I mean, a lot of times clients just haven't done anything. Like they haven't ever done media relations. They haven't ever really engaged with a PR pro or a PR agency or anything. And so when they get that particular, that early on or that insistent, I'm like, wow, Rome wasn't built in a day. I mean, you've got to start somewhere, right? You might still be trying to pitch for those bigger, top tier publications, but at the same time, you want to be going after industry trade publications or looking for other opportunities that might be a fit. Even starting local, regional sometimes. I mean, I have clients here who some don't care at all about being in the local news, and others, that's all they'll ask for. And I'd be like, well, let's think beyond that. But, at least it's a place to start because you've got to start somewhere, and then it can build momentum. It can snowball from there and get going, but you've got to start somewhere.
I'm throwing out a publication I saw today. Axios is doing a new communications newsletter, and they actually had a great line in it today. They were talking about the future of PR, and they were talking about looking to the political world for inspiration, and there was a quote in there that really sort of summed up what Michelle, you were just saying, and where the industry is right now. You're creating a beautiful tapestry of top outlets, local media, and non-traditional publications. That's how you expand your reach, and that's it. That's exactly it.
Yeah, because, reporters read as well and search and do research. And so they might even end up seeing something that was in a local or trade publication and getting a story idea and contacting you out of that. And that's the thing that I keep trying to drive home. It's like, well, again, it's not an overnight answer or fix, but if we start, just really putting some effort into it and consistently, I think it will yield results, but it's not going to happen overnight, and it's not going to be the Wall Street Journal overnight. So any kind of attitude like that is a red flag, in my opinion.
I also believe that there are a lot of journalists that are risk averse. They're not going to cover a company that's never been written about before. So they're going to look up and say, well, who else is writing about these guys? And if there's nothing there, or there's only a couple things, they may walk away. It goes back to, I call it the Kickstarter phenomenon. Early on in Kickstarter, TechCrunch reporters and a lot of reporters were covering the interesting Kickstarters, and none of them ended up seeing the light of day or going to market. And then all of a sudden they're like, I'm not touching this stuff with a 10-foot pole.
I'm just reading up this Axios article that you shared. There's a term here that I don't think 12, 15 years ago was really part of it, or it was burgeoning, but now people say it all the time. And just kind of want to get your guys' take on it. Paid, earned, and owned media, right? Yeah. Like that's a big job change for me, because it was always earned media, right? Mm-hmm. There was enough books out there that, like, I can get you in the Industry Standard, I can get you in TechCrunch, I can get you in the Wall Street Journal. Everybody's writing. There's big budgets. There's advertising. So I can get earned media all day. Owned is something that we consider blogging right now, that we're now doing a lot more part of. And then paid is actually because of the economics of journalism today. There's a lot of people taking contributed content if you pay them. Thoughts on that?
I mean, I get contributed articles placed without any payment. So for my clients, I mean, that's a big part of what we're doing. We're ghostwriting. I'm ghostwriting. I say it's me. I don't really have a team. It is just me. So I'm interviewing the executive. I'm ghostwriting the piece. I'm pitching, placing the piece. So it's a whole package of that. And there is no advertising, no paid, in that equation, that does not work that way. It can work that way, but for my clients, I'm not doing as much of that. The PESO model, I'm definitely referencing when I talk at Content Marketing World next month. I pulled up Jenny Dietrich's slide, which is the trademarked version of PESO, and she came up with that, and I think that we need to be talking about that, because when you say earned media, some people just look at you like they don't understand what you mean, and so there is a difference, and people confuse advertising with PR all the time. So to me, it's clear. I'm not saying that you can't blur the lines or that they aren't blurring a little bit, because I do think if your client is paying for ads, that you can leverage that on the editorial side a little bit, as long as you're subtle about it and not, gross or tacky about it. But yeah.
Did you say PESO? What was the acronym you were
PESO, using? Yeah. Paid, earned, shared, and owned. Mm-hmm.
Oh, did I miss out on the PESO? Am I 2 years, 5 years behind? Paul, had you heard of PESO?
I'd never heard of PESO. I kind of figured it out while she was talking. It stood for. It's what we do in our job. Every acronym we get thrown at, we're like, okay, quickly figure out what the hell this is.
Yeah. Well, because there's so much confusion. And so I think, we need to be talking more about that with clients and just educating people, because they don't necessarily understand I don't think people understand what PR is half the time. I mean, no. I don't know if that's your experience, but that's definitely, they think they know, or they pretend to know, but when you really ask them, or when you really start talking, you're like, yeah, you don't really get what this is.
All right, Michelle. So how do you explain it? What do you say to the layman, to your mom, to your cousins?
I mean, it's not an ad, it's not, we didn't pay for this. Right. So, that's how, and it goes beyond media relations. When I send you the PESO graphic, you will see how many things are in the earned media bucket, or the owned media bucket. It does go beyond blogs. It is that, but it's, any content that's created that a company posts on its website, for example, could be case studies. A lot of times I've been working with clients on success stories, customer success stories, and we'll place those in a trade publication. So we bring a lot of value out of one piece of content. So we create the content, it lives on their site, and then we pitch it and we get an earned media piece. Then we share it on social, so, and you can boost it if you want and pay too. So there's a lot more kind of falling out of every effort, I would say.
Yeah. I want to turn the attention to a little bit. We talked a little about clients and what we can do for them. Mm-hmm. So you're here because you actually do a lot for the PR professional, right? And that's what we're hearing, right? You sort of become, as Paul said earlier in this conversation, she's saying what I'm thinking a lot, You go out of your way to do this. You do a PR lunch hour on Twitter Spaces.
Yep.
I haven't joined yet, but I've been wanting to. And then I see it and I'm like, where do I jump in? Can you explain what's happening there and when you do it?
Yeah, we do it every Friday at noon Eastern. It is PR lunch hour, #PR lunch hour. And if you have Spaces, which I think most people have access, I use it. I think I can only get it on my phone. That's the way I access it. It'll show up at the top of your Twitter feed, all the spaces that are happening. So, and I co-host that with two other PR pros, and we have PR people from all over the world who tune in, and it's really interesting to hear, what challenges they're facing, how they're getting their wins. We talk about hot topics and crisis communications. It's fun. I mean, we have a lot of fun with it, but sometimes it does get serious as well.
What's participation like? You get a half dozen, a lot of folks here and there?
I'd say 40.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. I love it because it's international. The having it at that time of day, we get people from the West Coast, we get people from the East Coast, but then we get people from, all over, countries all over. That's the same. I host freelance chat for freelancers on Thursday, and we do it at noon because we can get people tuning in from all over. So that time of day seems to work really well to attract an international audience.
All right. So let me ask this for you then. So like you're a freelancer, okay? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I have like a little boutique thing, kind of freelance. I'm in the middle right now. Paul has an agency. What do you say to folks when you're like, should I hire a freelancer or should I hire an agency?
That's a good question. And I worked in an agency before I went out on my own just to get that experience. And I don't have anything against agencies per se, but I do hear a lot of people who come to me say, you were really hard to find, because I think agencies in some cases can be expensive, right? And they can be overkill for a smaller business, or maybe you have a marketing department, but no PR arm, no PR person internally. You can't support that, don't need that. So I think that a PR consultant works well in those situations. Now, I'm not saying it's for everyone. An agency is not for everyone. Hiring an internal person is not for everyone. So I think it's as good to be aware of the options. But I have had more than one person, mention that it's just hard to find an experienced solo PR practitioner. And so I think if you have that expertise, there are endless opportunities right now. I am turning away work, and a lot of it is from agencies because they can't seem to hire enough senior, people to fill in the gaps of what they're looking for.
Michelle, you should listen to early episodes of the Embargoed. We go off on agencies at the time.
And to clarify, there's a difference between small agencies and large agencies.
Yeah. Large, we definitely went off on large agencies, right? So, but I get it, right? So like I always say, there's a consultant can fit in anywhere, right? So Michelle, you, me, I've done it many times. I've come into a lot of my clients have hired me as their acting comms officer. And it was an engagement, some of them for years. I was sort of like acting in-house PR person for them. But I was still doing other work on the side. And it works. As long as, obviously you're doing the work and the relationships are good and you're producing results.
Yep.
I have that flexibility. I have the flexibility to do that. Agencies don't have the flexibility to be like, you can only work 10 hours this month and then 30. They want 100 hours every month so they can predict the team, hire the staff, and move it forward.
Yep.
I think there are clients that, and it's very often the client. It's how they're structured. based on what they need. There are clients that need a team of 4 or 5 people to manage them because there's so many moving parts. And then there's some that have a lot going on where it's better to just have one person or 2 people. And the challenge is sort of helping guide the client in the right direction. And on the other end of the spectrum, there are startup companies that don't need PR support yet. They need to sort of get their internal house in order and figure out, is there an internal PR champion that can help sort of drive the building, get the building blocks right. So then, then the solo PR freelancer or a small agency or even a large agency can come on. There are steps that you need to take.
Sure.
Yeah, you can do a lot of that. I think for a lot of people that pick big agencies too, Paul, you said it, like there's some clients that need a lot of handholding, and they need a writer, an account manager, a media relations person. And then a lot of times, and this is what people don't see, Michelle, when I tell them my job, we're counselors, we're sounding boards. I have taken so many calls from clients driving on the way home, complaining about an executive interaction or something that happened in the office. And my job was to make them feel better. You still got this. You're doing great. Here's what we're going to do next, kind of thing. Have you guys had that experience before where you're working with clients like that?
I find myself doing more of that, and I actually enjoy it. I mean, it's, sometimes it's like they're unloading on you, but I find that, it's hard. See, here's the thing, in my brain, it's hard to figure out how to charge somebody to, like support them in that way, but it's consulting. They're calling on your expertise. Sometimes, again, they just need somebody to listen maybe, and maybe not really, do anything.
I don't fear that at all. That's my most valuable time with them. On the phone. I had a client that would leave work and call me during rush. I had to take his call at like 6:00 every day to catch up on everything because he was stuck inside dealing with everything, and he let it all out at the end of the day. And I'm like, I was just 30-minute ride home.
One of the biggest challenges, and this comes from my days when I was a client, is and this was in sort of a very, very, very B2B tech company. I was the only PR person, and no one around me spoke my language. It was all KPIs and programming and stuff. And, they didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what they were doing. And my outlet, my therapy, my counsel was the PR people I worked with externally. And that was how we were able to sort of move the needle because, no one internally understood what we did.
Yeah.
Michelle, your Twitter game just inspires me every day. What frustrates you, or what are you most excited about right now? And those could be 2 answers.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, what frustrates me is the way that some NPR tend to treat media relations. So they just spam out these, poorly written, badly targeted pitches to like hundreds of reporters. I'm listed in a database, a media database, because I do some freelance writing, and I'm in Muckrak's database. So I get pitches. And I mean, a lot of them, I know, like reporters will tell you this, but now I see it myself. I'm like, when have I ever written about an eyelash curler? Or when have I ever written about bath bombs? And, have I ever, I talk and write about a lot of things, but those are not, like if you looked at anything I ever did, you would know right away, that's not me. So what they're doing is they're not doing their research. They're not doing their homework. So that's upsetting to me and bothers me. And I see, the lack of trust and faith in what PR can do for people, because it can be really powerful and effective. And I think companies need it more than ever because consumers want transparency. Your internal audiences, your employees want, to know what's going on. They want to know first. There's a need for skilled, experienced, strong PR pros and writers across industries, right? However, when these folks do this, it just takes us all down a notch, and it's really hard because I feel like it is a lot of, and I've had reporters tell me they think it's coming, and they can see that it's coming from agencies, from less experienced professionals who probably need training or need, somebody kind of overseeing what they're doing, and having worked in an agency, they always gave the media relations jobs to the younger, more junior folks. And I don't see it as a junior activity, and nothing against those, those folks that are trying to learn, right? They need a mentor, they need some training. And I think reporters are just begging, for that to happen. And I see that on Twitter pretty much every week or every day.
It's the perennial problem.
I love that. I love that reporters are calling out bad pitching, and I swear I always, it's always grateful it's not one of my pitches, but they call it out now. And I think, and it's well deserved.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the spammy link builders, there's those folks around too that try to equate what they do with PR and the guarantees. We can guarantee you a link, a story, whatever. I'm like, with media, there's no guarantee. Okay. If somebody promises you that they can get you on a publication, that is not earned media. That's probably on the paid media side. Not saying you can't do it, not saying there's anything wrong with it. Let's just be clear about what it is that we're doing and what we're getting, because honestly, I work with clients who want to pay for stuff and it's just not as credible, so I feel like we just need to make sure we call that out and understand the difference.
Yeah, and then you add in all the magazines that'll put you on the cover for a fee. You might have heard our Kathy Ireland episode. Let's bring her up again, Paul.
Got to.
Dennis Quaid, others, etc. I got one this week.
It was Total Prestige.
Total Prestige, that's what it was. It was a magazine called Total Prestige, and it's not going to cost you anything, but we'll sell it to you after.
Contribution fee of $300.
Wow.
To enjoy the powerful benefits of this high quality feature, there's a contribution fee of $300.
Yikes.
That was a new one. I haven't seen that one yet. So anyways, Michelle, thank you for being on the show today. If you have any parting words for us, you can share them. If not, we'll get you out of here and keep you clean.
Parting words. Well, you asked what I was excited about. I'm excited that people see the value in PR. So I think companies, they understand the importance of being visible, being online, being out there. The pandemic drove that home. I think a lot of companies didn't value what we did as much before. And maybe now they see, we need to stay out there, and we can't disappear. We can't go quiet. And you need an experienced, strong PR pro at the table, whatever, from wherever that comes, internal, agency, consultant, you need that person there to help you, navigate.
Yeah. There's always going to be work for us. We just got to go find it, and it's out there. And people need to find us and find people like you, Michelle.
Michelle, we're so grateful you joined us today. And as always, tune in every other week for the Embargoed.
Yeah, great to have you, Michelle. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye-bye.